Okay, Bill, I guess I explained to you the reason for this interview is that both the Smithsonian and Newport are having an evening concert that's devoted to the development of bluegrass music, and in honor of, and of your part in the development of bluegrass music, and you're the featured performer on both those shows. And Ralph wrote an article in 1963 in Sing Out. Did you ever read that?
I think so.
Yeah. And it was kind of, just a general sort of history of you and some of the things that had influenced you and stuff like this. But Newport wants an article and Sing Out wants an article to be published right around the same time, just, about you, and so that more people will be able to understand what it is that you're trying to do and what your contribution to music has been. And so people will have, be able to have a better understanding, I guess, of what you're trying to do. And I think it's important that people, especially to do it in your own words, like we did the record interview. We quoted from things that you said, and in your own words, and I think that it's better that way than for us to try and say things about you. I mean, we say a certain amount, but it's always, I think, more interesting to people to have the person themselves explain and talk about things. Anyway, some of the things I wanted to ask you about specifically, what Sing Out's going to do is they're going to do Uncle Pen. And what I wanted you to, if you could just kind of recall your Uncle Pen and talk about him a little bit and tell me things that you remember about him. And he was, did he live right near you?
Well, on the last days, that I was in Kentucky, me and him lived together. We batched what you would call it,
How old were you then?
Between 17 and 18, right at 18
Mm-hmm.
years. Yeah, I'd say 18 years old. Well, I left Kentucky when I was 18, so it done been. I guess I stayed with him probably a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And
You can open that window if you want, Bill.
that's fine.
Well, he was around, wasn't he, when you were a small boy?
Yeah, I can remember him when I was real small.
Yeah.
I guess I can remember him back when I was 8, 9 years old, or
Mhm.
7 or 8 years old. And back them days, you kept quiet and listened to what other older people talked about, and if you didn't, you would run out of the room, And he was, was more the age of my father, and my father respected him, as a brother-in-law, and we thought he was a wonderful uncle, and he was. And then of a night, the older ones of the family would always, ask him to play, and he would play. If we didn't have if it was just a fiddle, why he would play, and we'd sit around him, and listen at him and watch him, and did you ever see a picture of him?
I never have. Do you have a picture of him?
Yeah.
He was your father's sister's husband?
He was my sister's brother, not my sister, but my
Your
mother's
brother. I
My
see.
mother's brother.
Okay. Did he spend a lot of time at your house then when you were a
Well,
boy?
later on, he had family trouble, and his wife left him. They had 2 children, and the daughter stayed with the woman, and the boy, Cecil Vannevar, stayed with Uncle Pen.
Mhm.
And later on, the boy died, I can remember him being buried there at Rosine.
How old was he when he died, though?
He must have been around 22 years old or something like that when he died. But I can remember him singing, at his funeral. And Uncle Penn, I can remember Uncle Penn there. And of course, I was older then, of course. And then my aunt, she passed away, and the daughter, she didn't live long either. So Uncle Penn come on and stayed at our house because our father died when I was 16, and he stayed there with us, There was nobody left but just me and my two sisters, and Uncle Penn would stay with us. And then later on, Maud and Bertha, they moved to some of my other uncles on the Monroe side, and I stayed on with Uncle Penn, till I left there. Up till then, I was just farming, and working in timber and stuff like that. And I left there when I was 18, and my last days there, was me and him batched together. He was a crippled man, he'd got thrown by a mule and was on crutches.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And he cooked my breakfast, my dinner, and my supper, And was just a wonderful, wonderful uncle,
When was he thrown by the mule when he?
I'd say I must have been around 14 years old, something like that, 13 or 14.
And he played the fiddle, didn't he?
Yeah.
Well, tell me something. Did he how did he come to play the fiddle? Do you know how he got?
Well, I believe that the Vavers, they seemed like they was gifted music, but just in their family, and they could all play, they could all sing some, and they could fiddle the old time breakdown fiddle numbers, and they played just, to listen to, and they liked it themselves, and I believe today that you have got to really like music, and you've got to you've got to see something in your own playing to make it good for the people.
You have to believe in it yourself.
That's right. You have to feel it in your heart, and you've got to love to hear the melody and the words and everything.
Yeah. Well, did Uncle Penn's father or mother play at all? Do you know?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No, I don't.
But as long as you can remember, he played the fiddle, and you used to hear him.
And my mother could play a fiddle too.
She did?
Of course, yeah, but she couldn't play like he could play.
Yeah.
But she could dance the old time, back step and that kind of stuff. And Uncle Penn could do the old time Kentucky back step, and I learned how to do it, from him.
Yeah.
And my father, he was a buck and wing dancer. He could buck and wing dance. It seemed like, I guess back years ago they didn't have too much to do, nothing to go to, and they danced, they got enjoyment out of it, and there's enjoyment, to get to dance to music, to hear music and keep time with it, and of course the more steps you have, the more you enjoy it. It's just like kind of learning more about music.
Yeah. I want to check something just before we... I'm not used to these machines. It would be great. I can see us sitting here talking, and I'd get through and I wouldn't have a word on tape.
And then go back to Washington.
And say, guess what, Ralph? Guess
I've
what,
got every bit of it down. Yeah, you sure have.
I'd never hear the end of that. Oh, I'd be so embarrassed. Well, Bill, I'm really curious about people's backgrounds, because I begin thinking more and more about my own, and I didn't know too much about my father. He died when I was small, and I never used to ask many questions, and now I'm really sorry that I didn't, because I'd really like to know more about him, because it helps you, I think, to know what kind of a person you are, to know what you're from. But what was Uncle Penn? Was that his nickname?
Yeah, Pendleton was his real name.
do you remember how you spell that?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know how.
Pendleton?
Pembleton.
Pendleton.
We just everybody in the country just called him Uncle
Yeah,
Pen, you know.
yeah. And it was Vandiver or
Vandiver.
Vanover?
Vandiver.
Vandiver. Did he have relatives living in Chicago, or do you have relatives living in Chicago? With that
I
name?
have some relatives living in Marion, Indiana, and up in that part of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there's some Vandivers still living in Kentucky, of course, you know.
Yeah. But you can't think of any around Chicago?
There's a Stanley Vandiver living in Marion, Indiana, and that's the only
Is
one.
he related to
He's
Uncle
a
Pen?
cousin. He's a cousin of mine. I don't know too much about my mother's side of our family, and I don't know near as much about the Monroes, you know, as I should know.
Yeah. We never realized.
I was the
until we
last
got
one
older.
in the family, and I think they know the least
Yeah.
of anybody in the family.
Oh, the last to know. But tell me something. What can you tell me a little bit about the house where you grew up, and what it was like, and what it was like when Uncle Pen used to come over and sit around and play, and used to listen to him?
Well, all of our family was born in a log house in Kentucky, out from Rosine. But Bertha and me, the two last ones, and they had built another house in up the road, and Bertha and me was born there. And that house had 2 big rooms and a hall, I believe. And that's the first time I can remember of Uncle Pen coming around, you know, to visit us on Sunday, bringing his family along, you know, and driving up with a team of mules, you know, and a
Oh,
wagon.
he did come with a wagon.
That's the way that they would come. Either that or they'd have a buggy. More so it was a wagon, you know. And I can remember him coming and spending a Sunday, or coming on Saturday and staying Saturday night and while Sunday, then going back home.
Yeah.
And
That's really nice.
and we got to visit them, you know, once in a while like that. And I thought it was great, you know, to get to go to one of my aunts on the Vandiver side, you know, and stay a weekend. All of the Monroes lived right along in rotation, you know. They lived 1.5 miles of each other, all of the brothers. Uncle Jack Monroe, then James Buchanan, my father.
Yeah.
Down the road 1 mile was my Uncle Andrew Monroe. On around the road about 1 mile was where my grandfather lived, and that place was given to Uncle Birch Monroe because he looked after my grandfather. And all around the road, I'd say 2 miles, was William Monroe, the man that I was named after, Uncle Willie. And that was all just, their farms joined each other, you know. And they stayed pretty close together. If something was wrong with one man, why the others looked after him. And that's kind of the way that they worked.
Yeah. Well, when they lived close together like this, and they all had farms.
That's right.
Did they raise crops, or you know, were they just small farms, or did they have really big farms?
Well, now our farm was 650 acres. I remember that.
That's pretty big.
And we raised corn, you know, and wheat and tobacco. And of course we raised a big garden. They had about an acre garden to take care of all of our family, and I'd say close to an acre potatoes.
Yeah.
And my father always, you know, fattened his own hogs and put his own meat away.
Did you butcher your own hogs too?
That's right. And my mother always had a lot of chickens, you know, a lot of hens, and she, you know, looked after them and would save the eggs, and my father, you know, could use the money to come out of the eggs to buy sugar, coffee, and what little in kerosene, you know, coal oil, what, you know, you had your lights with, and that's before electricity was in that country. And that's kind of the way it was.
Yeah. Do you remember what kind of a man your father was? Do you have a real clear picture of him?
I do have a wonderful picture of my father. When I was real small, you know, I was too small to go with him, and he worked hard, and he had men that he worked for him, and I would want to go, and when I couldn't go, you know, maybe I would say something about him, and I remember my mother would really get me. But later on, when I got to seeing what kind of a man he really was, you know, and the kind of man I really wanted to follow, he was a truthful man, and honest, and would do you a favor, you know, and he was kind of I'm this much like him. You know, if I do you a favor, I might ask you for one, and that was the kind of a man he was. And I have tried to grow up under what kind of a man I thought he was like. I know I have an awful soft heart, and you know, I've often wondered about him. I imagine he did too.
You think he did?
I kind of believe that he did have.
Was he strict, kind of on the outside?
Oh, he
and
was
gruff?
strict. Alice, he had a much better education than I've got.
How far in school did he go, Bill?
He just went through the 8th grade, but back them days, you see, 8th grade was a good education.
Yeah.
And he kept his own books. And I still have all of his books, you know, that he kept. And they lead way on back. I don't remember what year he started keeping them. And no matter what he bought, you'll find it in the book. You know, if it was a plug of tobacco, if there's anything like that, sugar or anything, don't matter if it was a nickel, it was put in that book.
Yeah.
And it's plain. He used indelible pencil. You've seen them, haven't you? I'm
not sure if I have or not.
And that's the kind of pencil that he used, and
is that like a
kind of like a pen, you know? It's
but with a point that you stick in.
It's the same kind of a point, you know, a pencil's got, but you know, it leaves a blue-looking mark, you know, that keeps on staying.
Yes, I have too.
And you see places in his bookkeeping where, you know, a man would work for 35 cents a day, and you know, or 50 cents a day, and then as the years come along, why they went on up to 50 and 75 cents a day and $1 a day. And I can remember before he passed away that he was paying $2.50 a day. So you see that's how
times have changed.
They really changing fast.
They're changing now too. Huh?
So he was a good man to follow, and he was a good leader. And in my work, that's one thing I have tried to be, is a leader for the people, you know, that's followed my kind of work. It's a wonder that I didn't, you know, stay on the farm, you know, and follow that kind of a life, because then I guess they might have had to run me away from Kentucky to get me out of there. And but you know, there wasn't much money back in Depression on the farm, and so I guess it's a good thing that I left. But I left Kentucky when I was 18, you know.
And he died when you were
16.
You said.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Was he a big man like you and Birch and Charlie?
No, he was about 5'10", I guess, something like that, and he weighed about 165 pounds. The Monroes must have taken their bigness, I guess, from our mother's side in a way of being tall, you know.
Yeah, was she tall?
Oh, yes, she was. And, of course, some of the other Monroes, now, like the man I was named after, Uncle William Monroe, he was a big man, too. I guess 200-something, and we need about 6'2" or 6'4".
That's big, yeah.
And so I don't really know where we got our weight from. We must have eaten a lot or something.
Your mother must have been a good cook.
She was a wonderful cook. She fixed the best green beans and potatoes and biscuits you ever tasted.
Oh, Lord. Hey.
We didn't have too many things on the table, but what we had was good, Alice.
It was good.
It really was.
Counts, it really does count. Well, what about your grandfather? Do you remember him much?
No, I don't. That's why I said a while ago, I don't know as much about the Monroes
Yeah.
or the Vanivers as I should know.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard my brothers and my father talk about them, but when you're small, you don't remember a lot of things.
You just don't pay too much attention, I think.
One thing that did to stay in my mind, and I can remember most of them, is the fiddle numbers that Uncle Pen played. Now that really stuck to me. I can play, I guess, 90 or 95% of every tune that he played, and can still remember. And I don't know how that stuck with me that close.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, why do you think, things like that stuck with you instead of other things?
I don't really know that. I must have listened to him awful close when he was playing, and well, we did play for square dances, I'd say when I was around 12, 13 years old.
And you played with him?
Yeah, we used to ride mules back, and go play for square dances around through the country. Any place that would want us, they'd send us word to come, and we'd make a little money out of it, never over $5 a night, and most of the time a couple of dollars a night.
Well, did Uncle Pen play the guitar? I mean, the fiddle, and then did you play?
I played a guitar.
You played a guitar with him then. It was just the two of you?
That's right.
Huh. And you were about 12 or 13?
Yeah, something like that.
Gee, that's interesting, Bill.
After he, I told you, Alice, about him getting thrown by a mule and crippling him. And he was crippled on all of his life, but he could still get on that mule, with his crutches, and I'd ride behind him, and we would go, play for square dances.
Did he have trouble standing up with his crutches and playing the fiddle?
He'd always sit down.
He would sit down and
Yeah.
play. Did you sit down too?
Yeah, I sit down too.
And they didn't have microphones then, I guess,
No,
did they,
no.
to play with? Well, whereabouts would they have square dances when you all used to play?
Well, used to be they would have them at Rosine, Kentucky every Saturday night,
In a school or community center?
And when the weather got hot, they'd have them out, outside, and they'd put out sawdust and dance in sawdust.
Oh.
And, or they'd have them at somebody's house, that wanted to clear out a room or something, and have just a social square dance.
Yeah. Did they have refreshments and things like that?
No, they didn't.
They didn't have.
No.
Would they start early and go pretty late, or?
They generally would start around 8 o'clock, and go on up till about midnight.
Yeah. And you just carried the instruments right with you on the mule then?
That's right.
Well, that's really nice. How far did you have to go sometimes?
Well, a mile and a half or 2 miles, 3 miles, something like that.
Wow.
But of course that was right back through dirt roads, There wasn't, that was the kind of roads we was on.
Yeah. Now tell me something. Why would Uncle Pen take you with him instead of, say, Birch or Charlie, who were older?
Well, maybe they had done left Kentucky, you see. They left there before I did. And they went to Detroit and on into Indiana, and they was working in some places like that. And I guess they was gone, when we done a lot of that.
Yeah. Do you think that Uncle Pen had a big influence on you?
Yes, he did.
As a child?
Yes. He would, he would tell me things that he thought I should do, and if he never told me anything, I knew I was doing pretty well right,
About the music, you mean?
Or anything.
Or just general.
Anything.
Yeah.
That's right.
He was kind of like a guide.
That's right.
Do you remember, Bill, anything about your father's funeral at all, or?
Yes, I do. I remember when my mother died. I was 10 then.
Yeah.
And I can remember her funeral. Of course, I can remember mine, or my father's when he was. I was 16, and he was 70. And at 10 years old. When some of your people dies, it's not as hard on you as it is, after you get up, I don't think, to where you really understand a little bit better.
I agree.
And to know that was the last one of them there, that really hurt too, And it's kind of like being put out on your own then to look out for yourself. Or brothers and sisters will help each other, but they don't. They can't take the place of a father or mother.
Did you feel pretty much alone then after?
And yes, I did. I felt that is. Well, I guess most of my life, you know, I have felt a lot of days I'd feel, you know, like that. Because I can see that through, you know, some of my music. It's, I can feel it down through the music, you know, about lonely or lonesome, you know, and you I don't, if you was raised in the city, you probably don't know so much about it, but being from the country, you know, there wasn't much going on there, and you have so much time to think and remember things, you know, that happened when you was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I can, you know, I can see that touch of the way that I feel down through my songs and through blues and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's in a way at times a lonesome feeling is a good feeling at times, you know. If you're in the mood, you know, to if you're really moody, why that seems like everything works together. You really get lonesome, and maybe I think blues is awful bad to have.
Yeah.
I think blues and being lonesome is two different
You do.
things.
That's true, because one is, I guess, blues is just feeling kind of depressed, but sometimes people need to be alone, you know.
Yeah.
Feel kind of lonesome.
And you think that you want to think things out, you know, and you want to think about things that happened back years ago, and so many things that did happen, I have never forgotten about them, and they cross my mind, you know, a lot of times.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think about how bad the times was, you know, and how short the money was, and how my father went about making the money to raise 8 children, you know, and you know, what you take today, it's a problem to raise a child, because it takes a lot of money, and groceries has really gone sky high.
Haven't they? Wow.
Of course, back in days, like I told you, we had a good garden and saved everything we could save. We knew we had to, for that winter was coming, and there was going to be a bad winter, cold, and I think winters back then was so much worse than they are today. Of course, you've got better equipment to heat with today, but
Did you just have fireplaces?
had a fireplace and a cook stove, you know, a wood cook stove.
Yeah. Did you get the wood from right around?
Oh, we had plenty of wood.
Yeah.
We had plenty of coal on the place, but we always burnt wood for some reason. You know, it's a cleaner heat.
The wood.
That's right.
Yeah, it smells good too.
And it don't leave the house smoked up, and coal, you know, will, I think.
Yeah. Did you have a mine on the land where your father?
We had a coal mines, and in the fall of the year, they worked the coal mines, you know, to furnish the 2 or 3 little towns with coal. Now, like Rosine, I guess there's 150 families there, and a lot of them, you know, use coal, and they'd want 100 bushel put in, or 150. Then Horse Branch was up the road 3 miles further, and Horton was where I went to school at, was west of Rosine a little ways, about 3 miles. So I can remember back in the early days, we'd have 6 or 8 teams of mules and horses going, you know, all the time. And some hauling coal, some hauling lumber, some hauling ties, cross ties, telephone poles, and some plowing. And it was, there was work going, you know, and just like I told you, my father was a leader. He just told them to follow him. He didn't say, get out, you had to do this and you had to do that.
Right.
He just said, follow me.
And he worked.
And he worked,
too.
and they knew they had to work with him. And if they if they didn't work with him, you know, they probably couldn't keep the job, and if they didn't come in at 6 o'clock in the morning, they come in 9, well, they got 3/4 of a day, you know, and that's the way he kept his books.
Did the men like your father, the men who worked for him? Did they? You think they had a lot of respect for him?
I have never heard nobody that said a word against my father in any way.
What kind of men did he have working for him?
Well, he had. I know there was a good many of the Vanivers, you know, that worked for him. You know, you had to make cross ties with a broad axe, and a lot of the people, you know, they worked for him like that, and there was different people in the country, you know, who lived nearby there that worked for him. People named Kirkendall or Wilsons and Burtons and Goodmans and some people, you know, could make a good cross tie. Well, they got paid so much a tie, maybe 10 cents a tie for making a tie. And and if after he would get through with his coal work, you know, in the fall and winter, well, then he would start on timber, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And
was there a lot of timber on your land?
Yes, there was. And that spring, when spring would come around, well, you'd go to fixing fences, you know, and then you'd get ready to farm that for 2 or 3 months.
So he was really busy then all the year.
Busy.
What kind of mines were they built? Do you remember? Were they shaft mines or
There was mines where you go in at the side of the hill, you know, you dig your way back in.
I see, yeah.
And you prop as you go, and you lay your own track. You lay a wood track, you know, and you might have a little jennet, or, you know, a little mule to pull the coal out from where it would be.
Yeah.
And then it would go on down to the tipple, you know, and dump itself, you see. And that's the way they worked there. And they have about 2 coal miners, you see.
Yeah. Well, did you ever work in your father's mines?
I have been in them, you know. I was small then, and I have been back in them, and I thought it was great, you know, to get to go back and and you went with a little carbide light, you know.
Yeah.
You couldn't see much, but I know in the summertime it was cool back in, and I thought that was really be a wonderful place to work.
I wonder if the miners thought it was good. Oh, we got sore back. Yeah. Well, what did Uncle Penn do for a living? Do you know, Bill?
He was a farmer, and then later on in life he done a lot of trading. You know, like if he stayed the weekend with us, well, he'd start out on Monday morning, and he'd go from one friend's house or on through to whoever he could run into, you know. If he started out with a mule or a horse riding, and if he had a pocket knife or something, he would keep trading, you know, and trade for boot, and maybe he would come back into that week with that same horse and a cow.
That's
so he must have been a good trader.
You never went with him when he did that?
No, I didn't. No.
That's pretty good.
But it gave him something to do, you know. He was, and a lot of that was before he got crippled, and I guess he enjoyed doing it and made a little something out of it. He was kind of man that never spent any money, you know. What he made, why he kept. And I don't guess he ever banked any money. What he had, you know, was in his pocketbook.
Yeah. Did he used to tell you stories when you were a little boy about?
Well, I've heard him talk a little, you know, about different things.
Can you remember any stories?
Well, he told me one story, you know, about him and my Uncle Birch Monroe was about the same age, and my Uncle Birch Monroe, he played a bass fiddle, you know, one of them, you know, that you played with a bow.
Oh, he played it with a bow.
And and he could play a little fiddle too, but I know they went to Illinois or Indiana up in there, and they was gonna, you know, go up there and get work on the farm. And from what he said, you know, they was young and nice-looking men back in the days, or at least they thought they was. I guess they was. And they stayed up there season, and I guess they accumulated all they could, but they come back to Kentucky. And he told me a few things like that that was interesting back in them days, because I didn't figure I would ever get out of the state of Kentucky,
Yeah.
And I believe back years ago, that there's a lot of people might have never got out of the county they was raised in. At least they didn't get very far.
Yeah, people go more now. I guess the car makes a difference, but there's still people who haven't gone too far away from their homes, and some people, I guess, have never gone very far away.
Well, and that's one thing I think back across, just say Uncle Penn or some of my brothers, and there are different people around Kentucky and Rose in Kentucky where I was raised at. Looked like their life was so little and so small, and they didn't have much to do, and they didn't go any place, and looked like it was. Well, I know that now, if I'd have been tied down like that my life would have been awful small, looks like, I wouldn't have known much or got anything done much.
Yeah.
And traveling is a good experience, and if I hadn't have got some traveling, I don't guess I'd have had any education, to just spoke of at all.
Well, but yet you have the feeling from the way you talk that, your family was a happy family, and that.
Well, it seemed like that was all they wanted,
But it's something. I mean, because a lot of people, no matter how much education they have or how much they travel, they're pretty unhappy people. And there's something sort of nice about having a home and a family and having, not good relatives, and you get kind of a warm feeling from that, I guess.
Well, when we all lived, like, I told you, the farms joined there, and there's a lot of people up and down that Ridge Road.
Mm-hmm.
But then the old timers got to passing away, you see, and the younger ones, they didn't make the kind of a farmer that the older ones was, and they wanted to get out and go to Detroit or go to some other city and get seek a fortune and come back, And of course, when they got out, they found it still wasn't so easy, but they got the traveling on their mind, and a lot of them went, gone a long ways, been in a lot of different parts of the country. So I often think of, how you could work on the farm and come in that night and have supper and go to bed and get up the next day and hitch up a team and go back and plow that corn again, and stay right around there in that same part of the country all week, and at the end of the year you were still right there. It looked like life would be you'd be so small like that, but had never got to see anything much.
Yeah. Did your parents ever talk about moving away, or did they ever talk? Do you remember that if they ever said anything about wishing they could leave or go?
No, that was their home, and that they wanted to keep it there.
Yeah,
and
that's a nice feeling too.
They wanted to keep it there and there was enough land, for the kids to have something left, and that's what they really meant it for, I think.
Yeah.
And if you're broke and if you still got a home, you've got something. You've got a place to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of thought things out like that.
Mm-hmm. Where did you go, Bill, right after your father died then?
Well, then after I left Kentucky, after my father died, me and Uncle Penn, we batched, 2 years. And then I left Kentucky when I was 18, went to Indiana, and I worked 5 years in Sinclair Refinery Company.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Doing what?
I worked in a compartment called the barrel house, where the barrels would come in and you would see that it didn't leak, and you would clean them inside, and they'd be painted again and ready to ship out again. And I worked there for right close to 5 years. And trying to learn to play on the side, you know, play
Mhm.
music, and the music finally won over, I reckon. So
It's a good thing. I can't think of you, you know, working in a refinery like that. But what made you decide to leave, you know, to leave your Uncle Pen after 2 years?
Well, you know, different ones of the families thought, you know, if I stayed there, I would never amount to anything, you know, that I would have a hard life, you know, and maybe I would get married there and I'd have a family, and I'd have to go through with you know, what a lot of them was going through there, and have a hard life, and I guess if they hadn't, you know, mind you'd shoved me out of Kentucky, I'd have still been there.
Did you enjoy it? Did you
Yes.
enjoy while you were living with your Uncle Pen?
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah.
It was hard because I worked every day, you know. I drove 4 horses, you know, and hauled cross ties, telephone poles, coal, or anything.
Wow.
And I was real young and too young really to be doing it, but anyhow, I had, you know, I'd growed up under my father, and I'd watched everything that they'd ever done, and I could do anything they'd done.
Mhm.
And and it was just like a new life, you know, a new world to leave there and go to a city, and when you'd never been out of the country, and start.
Yeah. Right. You were turning sober before.